Welcome to Critical Role Demystified. I'm Mike Christensen, and this is the series where we break down the lessons we can learn as GMs and as players from episodes of Critical Role. Today we're tackling episode 42, Dangerous Dealings. As a note, I know these videos do much better than most of my other videos, so if this is all you know me for, I really encourage you to subscribe. I've got 3 videos coming out between now and the next Critical Role Demystified installment that all talk about factions and politics in your games, since that's going to be an extremely relevant topic in today's episode. So, if you want to see those videos when they come out, make sure to subscribe. Just FYI, there is no Ashley in this episode, and unfortunately, thanks to her blind spot filming schedule, she's not going to be back until episode 48. As the game opens, Vex and Keyleth start discussing the virtues of going to the Clasp to recruit them as allies. And Vax admits there might be a bit of extra baggage he hasn't shared with the group.
They're the only functioning organization left in this city at this point.
It's true, they're sort of a double-edged sword, though. I mean, they should not be trusted. We cannot trust them, but they are an infrastructure under the city. They may have more of an idea of what's going on than we do. I'm the best to speak to them, but I'm not on good terms with them, and I've never really talked to you about this, but you were marked at one point a long time ago.
What?
And,
For death?
Actually, yes.
Pretty sure that's Why?
Well,
What did I do?
I'm sure I don't know. The reason there is a brand on my back is because I interceded. Some other schmo died instead of you. And, you might be a bit of a sore point with them. I don't know. They might not remember, but I don't think that's true. I think they'll remember.
This is something that was part of Vax's backstory from before the game even began, to explain why he's a member of a Thieves guild and his sister is not. Later in the episode we'll get a full recounting of what Vax experienced with the Clasp, so I'm going to save my commentary for the lessons we can learn from that moment. But why is Vax bringing this up now? Well, because he's really not sold on giving the Clasp more power over Amon. Now, he does agree they should probably go talk to the Clasp so they can at least have a hand on the wheel. Otherwise, if they just leave town, the Clasp could basically take over the city without Vox Machina having any idea what they're up to. The cast goes through some of their potential allies again, including the Slayer's Take and the other Ashari tribes. They decide to start scrying on some locations to figure out how everybody is doing. Between Pike and Keyleth, they can scry 4 times a day, and that's without eating into their higher-level spell slots. Pike scries on Vasselheim and Whitestone, and they're both fine, untouched by the dragons. It's a really nice coincidence that the 2 places they asked Pike, the NPC, to look into are both untouched by dragons. That looked out really nicely. And that wasn't deliberate. Matt didn't pick these locations, those are just the spots where the other players asked Pike to scope out first. At this point, Matt narrates that a child refugee starts crying and Pike goes to tend to them. This is such an elegant way to write Pike out of this conversation. Like, obviously she's still nearby if they need her again, but Matt also explains that she's helping comfort and heal the refugees, and this task is certainly important enough that nobody questions why she's doing it instead of hanging out with the rest of the group. Keyleth scries on Singorn, the city where Vex and Vax's father lives, and Matt whispers in Marisha's ear, because Keyleth reports back to the rest of the group that the city is gone. Not ravaged by dragons, just not there anymore. As in, there's a huge chasm where Singorn once was, like the city just transported away. Matt asks Vax and Vex to roll history checks, but neither gets higher than a 15, which is not high enough. Taliesin asks to roll, arguing that his character was a big old nerd growing up. Matt asks if Percy's proficient in history, and he is, so Matt agrees to it. Now, Matt's approach to how to handle skill dogpiling will evolve over the years. In more recent episodes where a similar situation comes up, Matt has instead said that trying to roll again when someone else has already failed means the DC has gone up, which also works really well. But anyway, in this case, Matt allows Taliesin to roll because he has the proficiency. Thanks to his roll, Percy knows that the elves have a security measure where they can move Singorn into the Feywild in times of crisis. They're probably safe, they've just gone into hiding in another dimension. Now, in a previous video, I mentioned that Matt prepared for the Chroma Conclave arc by carefully placing all the pieces on the board. And you probably don't remember this unless you were really listening for it, but in episode 37, we learned that Riskil Daxio's father, Mikhail Daxio, was the leader of Amon's armed forces at Fort Daxio, and he had just recently taken his army on a troop movement down to visit Singorn. Remember my video about the virtues of removing all your hero's most powerful allies so the protagonists have no choice but to solve the problem themselves? Not only has Matt removed the elves from play, but the man who seems to be the highest-ranking military leader in Amon, and a significant portion of the armed forces, are stuck in the Feywild with the elves. As their final scry of the day, Keyleth checks in on the Air Ashari on her actual homeland, and they are safe and sound, and apparently oblivious of the actions of the Chroma Conclave. The party pretty much settles on their plan. Over the course of a couple of days, they'll move all the refugees from the keep to Whitestone using Keyleth's transport via plant spell. Then they'll go to Whitestone and travel on to Vasselheim from there. They can travel around and gain allies thanks to a combination of Keyleth's transport via plant spell, and of course, her Windwalk spell, which she learned the hard way is terrible for combat, but great for travel. And at some point, Percy and Scanlan would like to steal an airship, though they can't really articulate the advantage it would serve against a dragon, considering they did already see a dragon tear an airship out of the sky, but they still really would like to have one. They think it was going to be useful. Vex adds an addendum to this plan. Percy should go through to Whitestone with the first group of refugees to brief his sister and the Whitestone Council about what's going on, and then he can teleport back using the Gatestone. And I'm sure by sheer coincidence, this plan ends with Vox Machina in possession of both of the Gatestones, which is what Vex always wanted, since being able to teleport one party member to another is generally more useful than teleporting one party member to an NPC in a different town. Luckily for the refugees, there are a number of empty houses in Whitestone for some strange reason. Percy debriefs his sister Cassandra and Realm Seeker Eskel Rydarian, the pre-stream mage they worked with to get the Lich's soul fragment out of Grog's chest, and then Percy takes the Gatestone and returns to the keep. Vox Machina re-enters the city, and as they walk, they notice a few flocks of wyverns in the city. One of them flies nearby, and it turns out the wyverns are mounts for lizard folk. Oh good, this means the situation has escalated over the course of a day. Thordak has minions now, lizard folk who ride on wyverns. One of them spots Scanlan and its initiative, so here are some highlights.
I'm gonna dominate the guy in front.
Okay.
Maverick, not Hollywood.
Maverick and Goose.
Well, in the end it was Hollywood, wasn't that his...
No, that was Merlin.
Merlin?
Yeah, but
no,
Tim
Merlin
Robbins.
was the teacher that
Merlin.
they got in trouble when
Tim
he spun
Robbins.
out.
That was Viper.
Hollywood was the guy that he was his...
You don't want to do this
This
with
is
me.
the first conversation I've ever been in this group where I feel young.
Those Top Gun movies sound fun. I should watch them at some point.
So you take another 20 points of damage total of piercing damage as they both just start tearing into your body.
52 points of damage just then? No, Scary!
No.
I thought you had 55. You had 55.
I did.
52!
It's 52
You
total.
got 3 points left.
That was close, guys. I saw my mother.
Just a fun joke about Scanlan's dead mom. It's been a while since he referenced her. She really doesn't come up that often during the campaign.
Bonus action, I will healing word myself.
Okay.
I can do that at higher levels, yes?
Yeah.
I'll do it at a level 4.
Okay.
And I will sing to myself, sort of sadly, pathetically, I get knocked down, but I get up again. Ain't never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down, I get up again.
Cake has never
Never
sounded
gonna
so
keep
bad.
me down.
In truth, a lot of this fight is about protecting Scanlan since he takes the bulk of the attacks throughout this encounter. Beyond that, this fight isn't a huge challenge, but Keyleth casts her first 7th level spell, Firestorm, which is pretty cool. But after the fight, they quickly hide the body so they are not found out, and then they harvest some wyvern poison from the creature's stinger. After the fight, Matt also clarifies that these lizard folk are wearing leather armor that has been dyed red, and reminds them that Allura mentioned Thordak used to have lizard folk servants. So Matt says, yeah, they didn't just wander to town, they seem like Amon's new police state. This is really useful to establish because there does need to be some sort of constant threat in Amon besides Thordak. Like, yes, if the party misbehaves in Amon and makes enough of a ruckus, Thordak would eventually be forced to descend upon them. But the problem is, once you play the Thordak card, that's it, there's no going back. Additionally, Thordak can't see everything going on in Amon. You need some sort of ground force, some sort of troops. This is also especially helpful for the lifespan of this arc. If Vox Machina or someone else can get their hands on an army and Thordak has no minions, then they've got a huge advantage against him. Sure, he was able to annihilate a huge portion of Amon's defenses, but once they bring allies into initiative with them, then just from the sheer perspective of action economy, Thordak needs some sort of buffer between him and the other forces that might come to challenge him. And he needs some sort of representative in the city to help enforce order and prevent any uprisings. And most importantly, if Vox Machina continues to enter and re-enter Amon, there has to be a challenge here. They're not just avoiding the sight of Thordak like he's the Eye of Sauron. You gotta have some ground and air forces to help maintain that element of danger. Now, a very minor spoiler here for the rest of the arc, but Vox Machina isn't going to spend a lot of time in Amon. But down the road, they will encounter other minions of Thordak in battle, and so the introduction of the lizard folk opens the door for Matt to throw other monsters at the party besides just dragons. The lizard folk are just loyal to Thordak because they assume he's going to win. And I mean, technically he already has. And introducing the lizard folk also plants the idea that they might not be the only people to swear loyalty to him in the interest of self-preservation, which is something we'll return to much further into this campaign, when Matt wants to mix things up with a non-dragon encounter that's still connected to the Chroma Conclave arc. Anyway, Vox Machina goes to the building where Garthok showed them the entrance to the Clasp tunnels, and they take a short rest. As they do, Vax tells Vex that she once had a stalker, and this person hired the Clasp to abduct Vex for them. Vax made a deal with them. Vax became a member of the Clasp in exchange for delivering a decoy that could be pretended to be Vex. Vax abducted someone who did the kind of crimes that I super cannot discuss on YouTube without getting demonetized, but let's just say he was a very, very bad man. Vax abducted this dude and brought him to the Clasp headquarters in Western, and then the Clasp touched this man with a stick made of human tongues, and the man transformed into Vex, and they delivered this pseudo-Vex to Vex's stalker. Now, Vox Machina has obviously dealt with the Clasp before, multiple times during this campaign, in fact, but this time feels different, and so Vax felt Vex had to know. He's also just being especially protective right now, given everything they've been through over the past couple of days. Now, recently I made a video about creating backstories, and in that video, I alluded to the fact that players still need to be responsible for making their backstories matter during gameplay. The burden can't be entirely on the game master. A good backstory should inform why your character is doing whatever it is that they're doing, otherwise, the backstory isn't really adding anything. Now, I'm still going to make an entire video about that idea at some point in the future, because there are just a lot of different versions of what that looks like. It's a rich subject with a lot to dive into, I'm sure. But in this case, we can see that this is exactly what Liam is doing. There's a moment in his backstory which has never come up during the game in the past 3 years, but that he's been thinking about a lot given the fact that they're discussing working with the Clasp and giving them control over the city. And because it's increasingly unlikely that they're ever going to run into Vex's stalker or her doppelganger, especially this deep into the campaign when their major challenges are world-shaking monsters like ancient dragons, now he's taken the initiative to integrate it into his role-playing when it feels like it's relevant. And I actually think that this story informs a lot of Liam's role-playing as Vax throughout this episode. Not just because he's particularly protective of Vex and wary about the Clasp identifying her and potentially taking some issue with her, even though that was a different chapter of the Clasp, and also the deal to protect Vex has already been fulfilled. Vax and the Clasp should be totally square, and they should have no opinion about Vex one way or the other. But that's another aspect of Vax's mentality that we're going to talk about a lot more another day. But also, when they were discussing this plan earlier, Vax was a little more reluctant than the others to give the Clasp a ton of control over Amon. And I'd imagine this backstory is a major reason why. After all, if they're willing to do something that chillingly sinister just for a little bit of coin, what else might they do for power and control over an entire city? Anyway, before the meeting, to help make her brother feel more comfortable with her going down to meet the Clasp, Vex asks Scanlan to help disguise her with seeming. He's reluctant to spend such a high-level spell on this, but she offers to repay him with a limerick. Now, for context, earlier in the year, Scanlan had been using a couple of pre-written limericks to inspire the party, and here, Vex has prepared one for him.
Have you heard tale of Scanlan the Bard? Or Burt Reynolds, if you look at his card?
Oh.
Always tries to get laid. Sometimes with ladies he made. But I still respect him, because rhyming is hard.
Whoa! Oh!
Anyway, Scanlan gives her the Hat of Disguise, and she attunes to it. They journey down into the tunnel and find a tent city full of injured Clasp members who are recovering from their wounds. Garthok vouches for them, and they meet with the leader of this sect, Spiraling Shen. And thus begins the careful negotiation.
Excuse the mess. We lost a portion of our territory, and I'm currently caught in mid-adaptation.
The city's in ruins. You are looking at the right hand of Uriel.
Uriel is no longer with us.
We know,
You are a hand to nothing.
of course. We're looking for what to do next with the city. I don't think any of us wish to be the pets of the beasts now roosting in the heart of Iman.
No, that does not do any of us any good. Business has ground to a halt. And we've lost a few good patrons in this unfortunate circumstance. We've lost our entire northern tunnel structure as soon as a creature attacked the Cloudtop district.
Now, I was tempted to point out that the members of a Thieves Guild would be far more cagey than that. They would not give over this much information to some relative strangers. But first of all, we don't know how bad things actually are for the Clasp. It's possible this is them putting on a brave face, and they're dealing with a lot more issues than they've even indicated. Second, Garthok did vouch for them, and the Clasp does share a goal to obliterate Thordak. So even in order to have this conversation, they have to have a frank discussion about the resources they have access to. Third, sure, maybe they still wouldn't divulge that much information to strangers, but Vax is a member. Fourth, the members of Vox Machina are famous. They might not hold the same position in the city anymore now that Uriel is gone, but They're also not just some random schmucks who wandered in off the streets. And 5, and most importantly, as a game master, you're constantly going to struggle with the balance between having cagey NPCs behave in the most authentic way possible, and not just shutting down your players and making them feel like they're talking to a brick wall. You don't want to make the players think that they're doing something wrong, or barking up the wrong tree, or like a negotiation isn't going to lead anywhere, because players always want to feel like they're making progress. If they don't get that impression from an NPC, even if it's more realistic that the NPC wouldn't give them the time of day, the party might just get frustrated and leave to go accomplish something else. After all, they only have so much time in any given session to try to get anything done, so why would they waste their time if it feels like they're talking in circles or running up a dead end? Matt does a good job here of having Shen be dismissive of Vox Machina's current status. It's not untrue that they've lost a lot of their authority, and it gives him a better negotiating position if he can knock them down a peg. But an NPC being slightly dismissive of them in a, frankly, very true way isn't the same as him being uncooperative. Matt is still keeping that door open because the more interesting question isn't whether or not they can convince Shen to make a deal. It's what kind of deal they might be willing to agree to.
We know that you're the next best thing to a government in Iman. And we want to know what's left behind.
Well, we're seeing to our own. We're going to see how many of our allies still lie within the city. Going to reach out to our friends across Taldore and see how much of a network we still stand to keep. Then, maybe call in a few debts, reach out to some friends, and see if we can find some way to supplant this red thing.
The city is going to need a black market.
Oh, I'm aware, and we are preparing for that. However, it's still fairly fresh, and individuals aren't willing to release any coin when all of it goes to the pouches of the thing that sits on us. And word just got back that Westron was also hit rather hard in the night. And these creatures have continued eastward ever since. No further word on their whereabouts. So, we're put in a reactionary position, which I loathe. We're used to being ahead of the rest of the curve.
Well, here's where we could help each other.
It appears that could be a possibility.
We need this city to stay alive. We need the citizenry to be fed. We need people to know where they're going to get their medicine, where they're going to get their food. We understand it's going to be tricky. We need information. We need spies. We need to know what's happening in the city, and you need people like us to stay out of your way.
That seems like a fairly top-heavy trade in our direction, if you ask me. There are many ways to get people out of our way.
There are ways that we can benefit each other.
I would love to hear it.
We have our keep that is untouched by the dragon's attack. We have a safe haven.
We also have strong connections to Whitestone.
And to the Slayer's take. That's what they're called, right? Yes? They're
Now
a
that
mighty
is a
force.
tough nut to crack, that city. If you're well connected in Vasselheim, perhaps we can talk. However, once this creature is toppled and the city is brought to it, I gather you would have the ear of whoever comes to power in this city.
We may very well be the person that comes to power in this city.
That is helpful. And I imagine you also have some, presumably, powerful connections in Vasselheim. We would be interested in beginning a sect of our fair trade in that distant, all too, how do I put it, xenophobic cityscape?
What?
If you agree to be our seed in that stubborn garden of a town, you have our aid.
So that's the catch. Yes, they can get the assistance of the Clasp, and perhaps more vitally, they can stay in the loop about what the Clasp is doing in Amon. But they'd have to give the Clasp the opportunity to form a new sect in Vasselheim. The party steps aside to discuss this, and Keyleth asks, is this worth it? Are they getting enough from this agreement that they should offer a foothold in Vasselheim? And Grog and Vex both agree, no, Vasselheim is not worth it. Percy agrees that this is just the Clasp's opening offer. He can counter with something they can actually deliver. But unlike Keyleth, he clearly still feels that not only is the Clasp inevitable, but they're valuable. After all, the Clasp can get food and medicine into the city after the worst disaster imaginable. That's a huge benefit. But aside from Percy and possibly Scanlan, most of the party seems pretty wary about a broad agreement with the Clasp. Now, there's an element of this that does boil down to, come on, Shen, we're going to help you kill a dragon. What else do you need? We've discussed this as well in the video about how factions might not help the heroes, but this is something a lot of players struggle with, because logically, yeah, you can see the argument that everyone should drop everything to help Vox Machina solve this problem. But Scanlan brings up a good counterpoint. Why should the Clasp trust that Vox Machina will be able to kill Thordak? They could just die in the fight. They do need to properly negotiate. Anyway, Percy returns to the negotiating table.
I just don't feel comfortable offering Vasselheim. I don't think that we could necessarily deliver, and we honestly have a lot to do.
All I'm asking is an introduction to a handful of key figures in this city. No more than that.
Well, I will not promise that now. What I can promise right now is some access to materials from Whitestone, and I show him my gun hilt, which is embedded with the gems. I can see what's still lying around and we can make a deal.
Jumping in here to point out that, in hindsight, this is a huge offer. Percy does not want much Whitestone or residuum out there in the world because those substances are very dangerous in the wrong hands, or arguably in some of the right ones. But he's willing to give some to the Clasp, which I think speaks to a few things. One, it speaks to how badly he wants assurances that Amon is in good hands and that they can stay up to date about the latest actions of Thordak and his followers. Two, it speaks to how much he trusts the function of a Thieves Guild to not only act in their own best interests, but the best interests of society writ large. Three, I suspect he knows it's just a matter of time until the Clasp gets their hands on some of Whitestone's exports via the black market. It's inevitable that at some point some residuum is going to fall off the back of a wagon. If the Clasp is going to get some anyway, Percy might as well get something for it. But Shen wants Vasselheim.
You think your council didn't have dealings with the Clasp for many years before
course
this
they had.
happened?
I am not
We
simple.
helped make this city function. All we're offering is this service to other places that maybe don't have the right guidance to achieve their true greatness. All I ask is an introduction. Beyond this other. Far after the fact. Don't even need to worry about it now. Who's to say what changes from now to then?
Who would we even introduce you to?
We don't even know anyone.
Yes, we do.
Oh.
We know some high-ranking clerics. We know
Yeah, a cleric.
Slayer's take.
Yeah,
We met a bunch of people up there.
in a zealot city? You want to go to a cleric and be like, hey, thought you might want to meet the underground mob boss.
Semantics, we don't have to worry about that now.
Here's what I'll
Just a
put
simple
forward.
handshake. And it's all done.
I'll put something forward to the group. If they prove themselves honorable, if they prove themselves faithful and capable of keeping this city afloat, then we will speak to whomever they wish us to speak to precisely of what they did. No more, no less.
Now this is where I think Percy makes a mistake, and it's one that I've made before as well, in the real world, when like shopping for cars and houses and stuff. You don't want to break the unified front when making a deal. He turns to the others and he says, yeah, we should do this. I'm on board. But when the others aren't yet, this lets Shen know where the weakness is, and he exploits it. You can see that the party is reluctant about the ethics of the situation, so he goes after that.
This is an issue of morality. I would like to remind you that, one, we've let you escape after murdering one of our leaders, only upon learning that he himself was an immoral individual. Also, we went against our word as an organization by letting you take a war criminal that had already paid his way out of the city.
And for that we are grateful.
And we gave you something very powerful in exchange.
And you got to keep that man's money.
That was business.
It was business, but business that was persuaded by the actions of good people and bringing justice. We want society to thrive.
I'm willing to kick this ball down the field.
So, without wasting any more time, shall we make this a fine, healthy city once again?
This feels a fair deal to me. And it means that we can leave knowing that the city will, in fact, still have a populace while we're gone.
You seem used to selling your soul, Percy.
It is the job of ruling.
So that's the deal. And it's very clear they're not going to get a better one. Negotiations are over. And this is valuable as well. Matt thought about what makes the most sense for Shen and decided that he really only would want access to a brand new city. As I alluded to earlier, not that hard for the Clasp to get some residuum, but thanks for telling us that you have some in Whitestone. That's good for us to know. And ultimately, what is going to be different in the day-to-day for Shen if he takes this deal or if he doesn't? Vox Machina isn't asking for much from him that he's not already doing, except maybe he would just have somebody micromanaging him on where they think he should focus his priorities. That doesn't sound that exciting. You have to be willing to walk away from a deal to show that you're serious. It's Vasselheim or bust for him. So yeah, that's the trade.
All right, then let's do this. Keyleth, shake the man's hand.
You don't have to.
You've got nice, soft hands.
Vax,
It should be back.
this is not the worst deal I've ever heard.
You just don't know that yet.
I have
But you
things
shake
to
his
do.
hand.
I've met the devil, that's not him.
Don't do it.
Percy, you make me so nervous.
Thank you.
I haven't all day, and my arm grows weary with patience.
Vax.
Would you like me to sing to give you some extra strength for that arm?
Vax, I will make the deal
I'm
if you're
good,
not up to
thank
it,
you.
but I will want your blessing.
You know what? Keep your deal.
Yeah, that a boy.
We're going to leave the city abandoned
Yes.
with no one to protect
We
the
are
people.
not
Yes.
abandoning it. We already discussed there are more than
I
one
don't
ways
think you're
to
going
cut
to
through
let
this
the
knot.
city fall anyway. If this city dies, you've nothing.
I agree.
If the parasite hasn't a host to feed on, the parasite dies.
And
No,
Percy,
thank you.
I'm sorry, but I think our methods of being rulers might differ. I don't think I need to sell myself for the greater goods.
Ultimately, Vox Machina decides that this isn't the best deal. Percy just hasn't done a good job of selling exactly what it is Vox Machina is getting for this deal. As they say, the Clasp is not going to let Amon rot beneath their feet. That's just not going to happen. However, the ultimate issue isn't that they didn't make the deal, it's that they came down here, offered a deal, and then backed out. That is going to have actual consequences.
Very well. Unfortunate as it is. Step forward.
Is this a whisper or I don't
No,
know?
this is him asking you to step forward. He steps really close to you.
Okay.
And he takes you by the shoulders and turns you around to face away from him. Do you resist?
I'm going to roll out of his hands forward to my friends.
Okay, go ahead and make an acrobatics check.
28.
28. You tumble away from his grasp, and you kind of... Very well. I know your face now, at least. And the rest of the class will know that you are a false member now. You're not welcome in these tunnels ever again. And if we see your face amongst our kind, it'll be our word that you are to be taken on sight. It's a shame you've marked yourselves our enemy this day. I wish it wasn't this way. But to step up and front us with such disrespect for all the patience we've shown you in previous years is just... that irks me. Stinks of a lack of civilization. So please be on your way. We'll do as we do. You do as you. Now be gone. He turns around, flicks his cloak, and steps back into the group as the rest of them keep their hands on their belts and just wait for you to leave. As you guys exit and find your way back up to the surface, as the last of you makes it outside of the entranceway, you immediately start hearing the slamming and breaking of stone from underneath you.
Nice.
And you gather pretty rapidly that this entrance is being entirely removed from possible entry.
Now, I don't know exactly what Shen was going to do. My guess is that he was going to carve the Clasp tattoo off of Vax's back, but Vax certainly reacted as if he was about to get assassinated. And I guess that's possible. Now, 2/3 of the present members of Vox Machina did not want this deal. As you saw from the reaction, Vex literally whispered, "Don't do it," before Vax could shake Shen's hand. Grog cheered him on as he denounced the deal, and Keyleth was very visibly, clearly relieved. But in the aftermath, Percy and Keyleth discuss what just happened. And listen, I love Keyleth and Percy. They honestly have one of my favorite dynamics across all of Vox Machina. I love that these two potential rulers so often do not see eye to eye about what it means to be a leader, but they still often respect each other and learn from each other. But in this moment, I kind of think they're both wrong.
I would like to point out, since you had such noble intentions towards my position on things, that this is your ego at work here. I may be many things, and I may be a deal maker, but I never forget that when I rule these people as well. I'm not better than them. And you may think you're better than them, but this is what it creates. It creates enemies.
No, Percy. The difference is that I don't think I'm better than them.
Well, they certainly think you do. And they are not pleased.
First, I don't agree with Percy that this was Keyleth's ego. Like I said, most of the group didn't want this deal. They weren't getting enough of a reward to make it worth it. Keyleth did not sink this deal, Vax did. But Percy doesn't turn his focus towards Vax, at least not yet, but towards Keyleth. Probably this is because they were literally just talking about the burden of ruling, and how Percy believes you basically need to be a sin eater. You need to do distasteful things so that people can live well. But again, that's not why Keyleth tanked the deal, because Keyleth didn't tank the deal. Vax did. She didn't like the deal, but neither did Vex or Grog. And as much as Percy is absolutely right that you do rule the people underground just as much as the people above ground, and you do have to make them happy, we also know from Vax's story that the folks in the Clasp aren't, like, good people. Sure, they might want the city to flourish, but even in the best case scenario, they're just capitalists. Their goal is to make the city make money so they can make money. Does that mean they're doing the best things for individual people? It depends on if that's going to make them money or not. That said, as we saw from Shen's arguments, the Clasp values honor. They stick to their word. Except, Grog wondered during the negotiation whether they could trust the Clasp to keep their word. And ironically, I think Shen's argument proved that they can't. As Shen said, he's frustrated by how often Vox Machina has asked the Clasp to look the other way and break their word, but they've still done it, just because it benefited them. And while no one who matters got hurt in those situations, and I do truly doubt that the Clasp would ever flip on Amon to team up with Thordak, they're honestly not the best people to make a deal with. That being said, let's talk about Keyleth's comment. I have less to say about her comment just because I kind of don't understand it. Like, I think Percy's right. Keyleth and most of Vox Machina clearly think they're better than the Clasp. Keyleth's reply implies that she doesn't feel that way, but what exactly does she mean? The only logical conclusion I can draw is that she's saying that she thinks more poorly of herself than she thinks poorly of anybody else, which would scan, because we know Keyleth is harder on herself than she is on anybody else. But I'm honestly struggling to figure out why she seems to believe that Percy thinks he's better than the Clasp, but she thinks she's not, when that's honestly not borne out by either of their actions. But that being said, when someone says something that you truly don't understand, you could go 12 rounds and try to figure out what they mean, or you can just move on to the more important point, which is what Percy does. He basically says, okay, fine, you might not feel that way, but that's how it comes across, and we just made enemies we did not have to because of it. Which again is a valid argument. It maybe doesn't matter how Keyleth feels, it just matters how you come across. That's really good life advice. If someone says something that you fundamentally do not agree with or don't understand, it's sometimes just better to say, okay, that might be how you feel, but that is not how it's coming across. Vex asks whether Vax can be traced through his mark, but Vax does not answer, which is kind of rude. But with hindsight, my guess is that Vax just doesn't think the answer matters. Either way, he just wants this mark gone. Keyleth burns it off with her fiery hand, leaving a hand-shaped burn scar. Percy starts articulating to the others that they've lost a great opportunity, but Vax clarifies that all he was truly worried about was that the Clasp would bend the knee to Thordak. Now they've met with them, he really is not worried about that anymore. Percy obviously wanted the benefit of the spy network to report on the actions of Thordak, but he says, look, what's done is done. They're just going to have to trust that Amon will keep itself running while they figure out how to kill the dragons. And truly, if I was a player in this game, I have no idea what I would have chosen. I think I would have hopefully asked for more from the Clasp, but what exactly could they supply? What position are they in besides gaining information? Is information worth Vasselheim? Well, it's easy for me to say no, because I've seen this campaign. I know how it plays out, but honestly, we'll never know. Because they didn't get that information, so we don't know what valuable additional information they could have gotten from the Clasp if they'd made the deal. I mean, I have absolutely no doubt that Matt would have rewarded them with something, and it might have really changed the trajectory of the entire Chroma Conclave campaign. But I won't deny that I've played a lot of characters like Percy, and they might have agreed to just giving the Clasp the name of a sketchy cleric in Vasselheim once all this was done, since that's just information in return for information. But I don't know for sure. What would you have done? On the way home, they nearly break stealth again, but manage to hide themselves better this time around. They go back to the keep, and that night, Vax goes into Keyleth's room because neither of them want to be alone tonight. Obviously, this got the fanfiction a spinnin', but I believe one or both of the players clarified on Twitter that literally they just lay in bed and held each other all night long, which I think is just really sweet. The next day, they make plans to evacuate. The guards and their butler and kitchen staff will come with them to Whitestone with the rest of the refugees, and they'll leave the keep abandoned. I really like the scene as they prepare to leave their home for, honestly, who knows how long.
So
Don't you need your tools?
I can pack up my kit, and I've also technically got I've got a reasonable workshop back in Whitestone as well.
You do, yeah. Okay, so you gather your materials, you prepare at the tree in the center of the keep, you say your goodbyes.
Before we go out there, I go to my room, I take a dump on my bed.
You've used it at the Temple of
No,
Sarenrae?
it's not a potion, just a straight up poo.
Just a straight up poo? Okay. Marking your territory. I respect that.
I hang a note on the gate of the keep.
Sitting on your own bed.
I don't want anyone else
checking.
to use it.
Just checking.
With like a butter knife, I put a note on the gate to the keep that says, if Kaylee comes, go to Whitestone. P.S. If my painting is delivered, please forward to Scanlan Shorthalt, care of Whitestone.
Alrighty.
Mind the poo.
I leave a note for Allura and tell her that we've headed to Whitestone as well.
Okay. All right.
No, I don't say Whitestone. I say the place where we sent you originally, so that she knows where it is. But
Nice.
Okay. Notes are placed.
Unlike Scanlan.
Spells prepared.
Packed everything that could possibly be used to make anything dangerous out of my...
Okay. So you have your supplies at the ready. You all gather in the center of the Temple of Sarenrae. Keyleth?
not yet, Keyleth.
We'll be back.
What's wrong? Are you ready, Vex?
I mean, this is the first time we've had a home in forever.
I know.
I'm leaving it.
Can you make it disappear or something? No.
We can go. It's nothing. It's
I can put a
nothing.
hallucinatory terrain over it that'll last a little bit, but not long enough
just
to make
stone.
it worth a while.
We've done it once before, we can do it again.
It will be built back better than before. That's what we do.
Let's go.
This moment is the Rosetta Stone for understanding Vex's greed and her obsession with status and wealth. Well, one of two. There's another one coming in more than a dozen episodes that is also a pretty key moment to understanding why Vex is the way she is. That's a moment that actually made it into the cartoon, unlike this one. But truly, Vex's greed is a major character flaw. It's gotten them into trouble before, and it'll do so again. But a moment like this really humanizes that. She isn't just greedy. She isn't just the party treasurer. She isn't just a haggler. A lot of this has to do with the fact that Vex and Vax grew up without a home. Everything else, all the hoarding and haggling, it's all in service of protecting what they have. Their first real home. It's a lovely moment. I love the entire clip I showed as the party prepares to leave their home and where all their priorities lie. But Vex's reaction to having to leave is really heartbreaking, and you can see Laura, throughout the past few minutes, preparing herself to leave the keep. And when the time comes, she still isn't ready. It's really lovely and really sad, and honestly, one of my favorite Vex moments in the entire campaign. They travel to Whitestone and ask around about any potions or magic items they didn't find the last time they were here, but no, there's still nothing. All Whitestone can offer is 2,000 gold from the treasury, which is not nothing, and some residuum glass. Percy does some tinkering, and then the next day, Vox Machina, minus Pike, travels via tree to Vasselheim. Matt reminds them of the layout of Vasselheim, and then they head towards the Slayer's Take Guild Hall first, because they always have rooms with the Slayer's Take. The party asks about Vanessa and Zara, and Matt says that they're both on a hunt. They also wonder if Cash is still there, but they forgot to ask about him, and they don't see him around the guild hall. But this is a really nice moment where Matt reintroduces some cameos from the Slayer's Take arc, specifically Merton the clerk, Aldor the warrior they stole the Hydra from, and Torbir, who was Will Wheaton's character. Man, I just love the dynamic of a bunch of PCs hanging out in a hub location, going on quests. It's that West Marches, always-on campaign idea. Oh god, alright, sorry. We're talking about the Slayer's Take, which means I'm going to start talking about how much I want to run another West Marches game where everybody is a member of a Slayer's Take style organization, and I absolutely don't have the time to run a campaign like that, so I gotta abort. Anyway, that's basically it for the episode. It's 11 p.m. for the players, and they don't want to start doing anything this major this late in the game. And Matt admits he's basically trying to coax them to figure out what they want to do so he can prepare for it for the next session. So they understand that, and they give him a wish list. Vex wants to buy potions and anything else they can find, and she wants to talk to Zara. Vax wants to talk to Osisa, the Sphinx who runs the Slayer's Take. Grog wants to talk to Earthbaker Groon. Percy's hoping to talk to the priests at the Temple of the Raven Queen, and hopefully their mapmaker friend. And so now Matt knows what to prepare. This may be the closest to the end of an episode that we've ever had a lesson, but yeah, here's a last-minute lesson. There's so much that we have to prepare as game masters based on what the players plan to do at the end of a session. So sometimes, if you're not clear on what the party is going to do next, you should just ask. Now, this kind of depends on where they are. Sometimes the party truly does not know what they want to do, and they should be allowed to change their minds and add something in between sessions. So I would even tell them in the moment, if you think of anything else you might also want to do, just text me so I can prepare it. In fact, there's a certain beloved NPC who the party neglected to mention who happens to live in Vasselheim. But that's something we'll talk about next time. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back in 2 weeks to discuss episode 43, Return to Vasselheim. This is a good one. I mean, they're pretty much all good ones at this point. I love the Chroma Conclave storyline, but this is where the party starts figuring out how they might want to actually be able to navigate this whole 4 ancient dragons issue. But in the meantime, I've got some really good videos coming out over the next couple of weeks. This episode of Critical Role was all about the party negotiating with factions, and so I thought it might be really interesting to make some videos about factions and politics. That should be fun. Yeah, I'm sure those videos won't be remotely controversial. So if you want to see those videos, then make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you can get notified whenever I drop a new video. If you want to help support the channel, that would really mean a lot if you can consider joining my Patreon. Every dollar helps so much more than you can imagine. I'd also love for you to join my Discord server. We've got a really wonderful community. Follow me on Twitch for some live stream in action, and sign up for my newsletter for updates. All those links are in the doobly-doo below. If you didn't see it, I made a video about the Cobalt Press Guide to creating cities and towns. It's a really cool resource that can really help a lot when making cities like Wyman or Whitestone or Vasselheim, so check that video out right here. Until next time, play fair and have fun.